congratulations on your new book. It's coming out in a few months, but it was announced today. It's something I care. I care deeply about California. I spend a lot of time in California. It still has so much goodness left in it. I hope people understand there are so many good people, patriots, and it still is objectively the most beautiful state that God has for us in this state. Steve, tell us about your book.
So the thing about California that I love so much is that in the best version of California, it should be the absolute best of America. It should capture the spirit and essence of America, freedom and opportunity and dynamism and adventure and the rebel spirit. That's the best version of California. But instead, what we've had for the last, and it's nearly 20 years now, of one-party rule by an increasingly extremist, far-left Democratic establishment in California is the opposite. We're now the worst of America. And that's not an exaggeration. That's why I called the book Califailure, because they are failing on every single front. You'd pick any issue, and California now is the worst in America. We have the highest rate of poverty from these people that lecture us the whole time about social justice and whatever, and compassion. Highest rate of poverty, highest homelessness, highest taxes, highest housing costs, the worst business climate. That's been voted by CEOs across America. California, the worst business climate in America, 10 years in a row. We're supposed to be the home of entrepreneurship. I mean, on and on. The highest gas prices, highest electricity costs. Everything is a disaster. And what I've tried to do in the book is not just list all those things and explain it. And there's a lot more than what I've said. I mean, the details are just horrendous. But try and explain why, because this is what everyone in America needs to understand, whether you live in California or not, because so much of this bad stuff that's gone so wrong across the country, and you see it in the Biden administration, it starts in California. As I use this phrase, California's become like the Wuhan lab of far-left extremism. They're exporting all this stuff. And so we have to defeat it here. And I go through all the ways in which this ideology has taken shape. I call it the pathologies of this ideology. So we look at, what's really driving it, right? It's not just politics. It's the elitism, the narcissism, the cronyism. I mean, there's all these different things that have added up to create this catastrophic failure.
And so, excuse me, can we just talk about how special the state is first? I want to start there. It takes an intentional set of decisions over long periods of time and overruling repeated objections to mess up a place as spectacular as California. Steve.
That's exactly right, because we have all these advantages, right? We once had the best education system probably in the world, right? The University of California system was renowned. The schools were great. We had the infrastructure, back in the day. And by the way, this was a Democrat governor, Jerry Brown's father, Pat Brown, built the State Water Project, the most incredible feat of engineering the world had seen, bringing water to the area from where it's plentiful to where it's needed. Just incredible things that California did, and it grew. And there's a time not that long ago, just a few decades ago, where people were flocking to California. Housing was plentiful and affordable, and there was this wonderful life, the California dream, and that's where people came to start businesses. And bit by bit, as they grew the government and they just got more and more into the nanny state mentality, regulating absolutely everything. The bloat of the government, the corruption and the cronyism has expanded the size of the government. So that's why taxes are so high. Half of it going out the door in luxury pensions and healthcare, to the unions, the government unions, who've completely wrecked the public schools. So no longer can you hope that your kids have a better life than you through a great education. So all these things are deliberate choices. That's exactly what I say in the book. This is not some, natural phenomenon. This is the result of policy choices. And the really good news is that actually I think we can get back to that great version of California pretty easily if we just make the right decisions politically. And so the second half of the book actually is called Califuture. And we lay out a plan for the specific policy changes that will bring us back to where we should be, which is, sometimes I use this phrase, if we think of America as the greatest country on earth, which it obviously is, and we love it so much, California should be the best of it. And to use that famous phrase, if America is a shining city on a hill, California should be a beautiful gleaming tower on the top. And we can rebuild that. And I think we can do it quicker than anyone thinks.
So, Steve, just briefly as we wrap up this segment, about 2 minutes remaining, before we get into the future, I'm curious, what would you say were the pivot points where California really turned in the wrong direction? Because, I mean, the 80s and early 90s, it was heaven on earth. I mean, you could come and get an affordable house. You could start a business. Some of the greatest entrepreneurs and companies. That was just at the beginning of .com and Silicon Valley, semiconductor land. I mean, we had every major entrepreneur on the planet saw California as the state of the future. That is where Elon Musk initially planted his roots. It's where Peter Thiel so what happened? What were the policy pivot points that created this steaming pile of garbage?
It's a great question, and it's answered in the book. And just to give you, just at the beginning, right, just a couple of points along the way, really significant moments were the granting of collective bargaining rights to the public sector unions, the government unions, because that entrenched the Democrats' power and enabled them to build this political machine that was so dominant. But the really important moment was actually a ballot initiative that was passed in 2008, which had the sort of nice sounding idea of independent redistricting. And what happened once that started to be implemented in 2010 was that the Democrats, again, these people who lecture us all the time about democracy, gerrymandered the districts to give themselves a supermajority in the legislature. So when that happened, and there was another ballot initiative that meant that you could pass a budget with 50% votes in the legislature, not 2/3 as it was previously. Putting all that together, they had free rein to do whatever they wanted. And that's when the extremism really came in. There was no opposition. The Republicans in the state legislature were frozen out. Look, I'll just give you one number to capture that. If you look, even in a bad year in California, Republicans get statewide around 40% of the vote. You look at the legislature, it's not 40% Republican representation. Until just recently, it was 20%, half what it should be. That's a result of gerrymandering. That means they've had this one-party rule, and they've got more and more extreme and passed all this nonsense. And so that's why the most achievable way of actually bringing things back in California is to run statewide, because there's enough Republican votes in California to bring common sense back to our beautiful state.
Amen. As there are more registered Republicans in California than any other state. Any other state. And exactly. Steve, stay right there. Califailure. We have another segment with you. I spend so much time in California. I vacation in California. My best friends are in California. Producer Andrew's there. My pastor's in California. Boy, if it can be done, it is the most worthy of all the political tasks. Because the prize of California, the untapped potential, every time I land in Orange County, I turn to Mike, I say, how did these maggots screw this place up? I say that. It's just,
I know.
And I mean it. It's just, it is a slice of the divine that we have.